So we start out by cutting out the elevons. The elevons are 30 mm wide. Mark with a pen and then cut out with several passes of the sharp penknife. Use multiple passes to cut the elevon sharply. Use the elevon cut out from the first wing panel to mark and cut out the elevon from the other wing panel. It's important to keep the elevons, both the elevons, as symmetrical as possible. Next, you have to bevel the wing panels. The bevel has to be made so that the elevons can be deflected downwards. Try to use a single pass of the knife to cut out the bevel in one single piece. After you do the bevel, test the elevon and make sure it can deflect properly in the downwards direction. Next, we have to cut out the elevons to make the space for the prop. Use the dimensions given in the manual to mark out the area that has to be removed from the elevons to cut out the space for the prop. Do the same for the second elevon. Use the cutoff part to mark and cut from the second elevon. This helps keep both the elevons symmetrical. Next, if you are laminating, then you can go ahead and laminate your plane, or if you are not laminating, like in our case, we are going to do the hot glue hinges. Use paper tape to mask out the areas that you do not want to hinge, and then after you hinge, test the elevons so that they deflect properly in the up and down direction. Now is the time to come and join the wing panels. Before you join, align and check the wing panels. If there is any trimming needed, you can trim at this point. Use cyanoacrylate glue to glue the panels together. Use some masking tape to keep the panels together while the CA cures. Next, we have to install our servos. Use a 90-degree set square set on the hinge line to mark the areas for the servo cutouts. Cut out the servo areas from the wing panels with a sharp knife. The same thing has to be done on the other wing panel. However, you need to make sure both servos are symmetrically installed. For that, measure and mark out the location for the cutout for the second servo on the other wing panel. Try to keep them both as symmetrical as possible. Like before, mark out and cut out the area for the servo. Now is the time to install the spars. The 3 mm thin spars will be installed on the Elevons. Trim the spars if needed so that they are of the same length as your Elevons. Then draw a line approximately 1/3 from the leading edge on the Elevon and do a shallow cut about 3 mm deep so that the spar can be fit on the Elevon. Make sure you do not cut all the way through. After you make the cut, use the spar to slightly widen the gap where the spar will be fit in. Use several shallow passes to make the spar snug fit. Press the spar so that it fits in snugly into its slot. Use something sharp or hard to press the spar into its slot. Once satisfied and everything is flush, use CA, a few drops of CA to glue the spar in place. Repeat the same thing for the other Elevon. Next, we will install our main spar. The main spar can be installed in a curved fashion, and mark and cut out the area for the main spar. This will be a 5 mm cut. Use 1 or 2 shallow passes to do the cut. Then widen the gap with the edge of the spar. fit in the spar and press so that it fits snugly in place. Make sure you do not twist the wing while doing this. If you find that if the spar does not fit in, then use the end of the spar again to slightly widen the gap or deepen the cut. The spar should be flush with the bottom of the wing. Use something hard like the edge of a ruler to press the spar in place. Once satisfied, use drops of CA across the length of the spar to glue it in place. Next, we assemble our motor mount. Clear out all the holes where the motor will be bolted on and test fit before gluing the motor mount. Once satisfied, use drops of CA to glue the motor mount together. Next, we install the motor mount on the main wing. Align the motor mount so that it's straight and exactly centered on the wing panels. Then use some drops of glue to glue the motor mount to the wing panel. Next, we assemble our motor. Use the screws provided with the motor to set it up in place. And tighten the motor to the firewall, to the motor mount. Connect the ESC to the motor. Before installing the linkages, we have to center our servos. For that, use a servo tester, or you can use your receiver hand to center the servos. Test the servos and make sure they move properly in both the directions. Then install the servo control horn so that it is perpendicular to the servo. Everything is working good. We'll do the same for the second servo. In case you are not able to get your servo arms perpendicular, get it as close to perpendicular as possible. Test the servos. All is looking good here. Tighten the screws to secure the control horns to the servo. Install the pushrod linkage and mark the location for the control horn on the Elevon. The control horn has to be marked so that the hole on the control horn is lined up on the hinge line. The horn has to be on the hinge line, as close to the hinge line as possible. Mark and cut the location where the control horn will be glued in. Use a few drops of CA to glue the control horn in place. Next, we repeat the same steps for the other servo. Next, we mark out the CG location. The center of gravity CG is 7 inches behind the tip of the nose. So it helps that you mark out this location for reference later on. So you can draw a line at 7 inches back from the tip of the nose. Install the winglets. You may need to trim the ends of the Elevon to make sure they deflect properly in the up and down directions without hitting the winglets. Trim out whatever is needed at the ends of the Elevons. Test fit the winglets and then use a thin bead of hot glue to glue the winglets to the wing panels. We will do the same for the winglet on the other side of the wing. Next, it is time to find out where the battery has to be mounted to get the CG balanced. Try to balance the plane on fingertips and move the battery to find out where it balances best. Once you find where the battery has to be mounted to get the plane balanced properly, mark out the area for the battery tray. And then cut out that area to make space for the battery to be mounted. Make sure you do not cut all the way through. We just need to remove about 10 to 15 mm of material. Use several shallow passes of the knife to cut out and make space for the battery. Test fit the battery tray and make adjustments as needed to get it as snug fit as possible. Mark out the location where the strap will be there and then slightly cut off that area to make the strap also fit in place. This will help get you a secure battery tray to foam glue joint. Test fit with the battery before gluing this in place. Time now to get our receiver installed. Connect both the servos to channel 1 and 2 and the ESC to the channel 3 of the receiver. Switch on your radio before connecting your power. Check the elevator and the aileron commands. If you need to set up your mixing on your radio, it's time to do that now. While we glue in our ESC, we'll also add in some FPV gear on our plane. I'm going to use a 3-in-1 Chinese setup which has the VTX camera and the cloverleaf antenna installed as a single unit. This takes in a 5-volt input, so we are going to connect this to our balance tab of a battery. Use servo extensions to extend the servo wires if needed to get it to the receiver. Mount the prop so that the writing on the prop faces the nose of the plane. Make sure you do not mount your prop in the opposite direction. The writing on the prop should always face the nose of the plane. We are going to shrink wrap our camera unit into some heat shrink tubing so that it's not affected by the hot glue. The electronics are not affected by the hot glue. Time now to check the video feed on our goggles. Everything is coming fine, so change the channels as needed to get it in place. Make the cutout for the camera and we shall glue it in place. Make sure you do not cut all the way through or weaken this area where the camera will be installed. Use a bit of hot glue to glue the camera in place. Use some hot glue to glue the battery tray there. Make cutouts for the receiver in the foam. The servo wires can be routed through a channel cut into the foam. Just use a single pass of the knife and extend it with the edge of the scale and push the wires in. Now the next important thing is to get the neutral setup on the Elevons. There's a very little reflex required on the Elevons. Reflex is slightly up setting on the Elevon when in neutral. So what we do is we give a full down trim and then center the servos. So we give a full down trim on the radio and then make the Elevons straight with the wing panels. Use the edge of a scale to make sure the Elevons are neutral. Then once set, we get the trim back to center and that gives the necessary reflex on the Elevons. Make sure the Elevons move up with up elevator, down with down elevator, left is properly configured, right is properly configured. Throttle is all set. It's good to reinforce the center joint with a little bit of hot glue. Add a few drops of hot glue and spread it with a flat edge. This will make the center very strong. Now all is set. Time to put the battery in place and go and fly.